In this video, we're going to replace the inner tie rod end on this 2008 Acura MDX. All right, we're going to take our wheel off and use a 22mm socket. All right, so we're going to loosen up this nut here, which is going to be a 22mm. We're just going to crack it loose, a couple of turns. Then what we're going to do is move back to our lock nut. So we're going to get on the inner tie rod back here with a 14mm to stop the inner from spinning, while we loosen up our lock nut here with a 24mm. All right, so now that we have our lock nut free, we're just going to back it off maybe a half a turn. Then we'll continue on with our front tie rod end. All right, so we're going to loosen up this nut here, which is going to be a 22mm. If this will spin and loosen up, we're in good shape. And it looks like it is. If not, we'll have to get in this specific one with a Allen key and a wrench, and it'll stop your center of the ball joint from spinning. But this one's actually coming out without doing that. So just spin this right off. We'll just try and pull straight down, see if we can get that to come out. If not, we're going to try a rubber hammer on top, like so. I'm going to count our turns as we spin it out. That's one full rotation, so we'll count full rotations. Now you can take your lock nut off. A pair of locking pliers, we can take this clamp off of our boot. Just remove that clamp. We're going to be taking this boot off. We're going to use a pick tool to get between the boot and the inner here and just separate that seal that it's made over time. We're not trying to damage the boot in case we do have to reuse it. We're just trying to separate that seal a little bit. You can also use a small pocket flathead screwdriver. And we're just going to try and pull the boot forward. Now there is a zip tie at the back end of the boot. Sometimes you can pull it forward and that zip tie will come with it. Sometimes you have to cut the zip tie first. So we're going to try just pull that boot forward. Doesn't want to come further, so we're going to have to go back and cut the zip tie. We're going to try and separate this clamp back here. Sometimes it's a zip tie, sometimes it's a clamp. This is a one-time use clamp, so we're going to have to knock that clamp open. We're going to use a flathead screwdriver the best we can, or a pick tool, whatever you can to get in there and open this up. All right. Now that we've got that popped off, we can take our boot, pull it all the way forward and right off the inner. All right, so now we're gonna remove our inner tie rod here. You can see this one could use to be replaced. So we're gonna use the tie rod removal tool. This is one option as far as removal tools go. There's a few different styles. You just have to push this up into place a little bit more. right, let's see if that worked. All right, now that you've got your inner tie rod loose, go ahead and remove it, and we can set it aside. Our new inner comes with this washer here. We're gonna pull the washer off. You can see there's two tabs on it. On this steering shaft here, you can see that there's a notch. So what we're gonna do is align our tabs in the notch and then thread in our inner. All right, now that we got it finger tight, we'll go ahead and grab our tool and torque it down. Now to install, we're gonna use this tool here. It's just gonna clamp on. We're gonna situate it so we can get to these bolts and tighten this down. All right, now that you've got your tie rod tool in place, we're gonna snug it down, then we'll come back and torque it to spec. All right, so now that we have our inner tie rod snugged up, we're gonna torque it down to 65 foot-pounds. All right, now we can remove our tie rod tool. All right, so now we're gonna bend these metal tabs forward onto the tie rod. I'm just gonna use a pair of big pliers, pull those tabs forward. All right, so now that we've got them started to bend forward, we're just gonna tap them with the hammer and just bend them all the way over. All right, we can take this nut off so we can put our boot on. All right, so now we can take our boot, slide it over the end. Now what we're gonna do is push it all the way back, as far back as we can get it. And then we're gonna align the back end here up along the lip where our zip tie will go. With our boot pushed all the way back, going to seat the back of the boot up on this lip here. Just gonna kind of center it up and push. And if you need to, twist. All right, now we can put our zip tie in this area here to hold that back of the boot on. Now we can take our zip tie. We're just going to get it started. A couple of clicks. Put it into position. In that little channel where it goes, and then just tighten down your zip tie. Take a small pair of cutters. For cleanliness, we'll just trim the rest of that zip tie flush. Okay, so now what we're going to do is take the front of this boot and put it back up where it needs to be in this little groove here. You can do that, just grab the boot, rotate a little bit each way and just pull forward as you do that. And if you need to, just push it back to set it in that groove. All right, once you're in place there, we can put our clamp back in. So you need a pair of locking pliers. That clamp. Your clamp may or may not be reusable depending on the size of the clamp in the boot. All right, so we switched over to a pair of pliers just to close up that clamp and open it up a little further. Put it in position. You always want to remember when you're working on clamps like this, leave them in a position where you can get to them easily in the future. For us, that's going to be right here. We put our lock nut back on. And we're going to spin it most of the way back. All right. Now when we take our outer, where we had a count of how many spins or how many rotations it was to take off, we're going to spin that back on to the same amount of full rotations. So we'll do that now. We're just going to angle this down a little bit to give us more room. Okay, that should be our same count. Now what we'll do is we'll pull in our lock washer to it and just snug it up there. Now when we turn and put our outer up to our knuckle, we should be very close to go back into the knuckle. Now what we want to do is get that all the way up. Like that. We can put our nut in place. We can just snug that up. Just going to snug this up here. There's a chance that that inner area of the ball joint may actually be spinning. We're just going to keep an eye here and see if it's pulling it in. Looks pretty good. I'll just give it an extra tug. Now that this is snugged up, we can lock in our lock nut in the back. So to tighten down our lock nut, what we're going to do is spin our outer to the point where it's locked. Now we're going to take a 21mm wrench and we're going to tighten our lock nut in place. Now what we'll do is we'll come back and we'll torque everything down. Torque down our outer tie rod to our knuckle. It's going to be 40 foot-pounds. Now that you got your tie rod back in place, your inner and outer, go ahead and put your tire back on. So we're just gonna not torque these, but just tighten them up, and we'll come back and torque them. All right, so now we can torque down our lug nuts. We're gonna tighten them down to 94 foot-pounds. Again, we're going to use a 22mm socket for that. We're going to do them in a crisscross pattern. After finishing this installation, it's important to have an alignment done on your vehicle.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.